Law enforcement and government agencies struggle with parking citations, often because no one will pay them. Boots or other devices are costly, and they invite confrontation when implied and later removed by enforcing employees. With Tire Tag, you can avoid many hurdles and ultimately promote public safety and revenue collection. To learn more, visit tiretag.com. For a thorough conversation on how Tire Tag can help your agency in revenue collection, visit episode 204. That's 204. From interviews to jail calls, Ditto Transcripts delivers fast, confidential, and court-ready transcription for law enforcement agencies. Ditto is CJIS compliant and is already working with agencies all over the U.S., including the Washington State Patrol and the National Park Service Investigations Unit. Get started now at dittotranscripts.com. That's dittotranscripts.com. To hear details about all the applications of Ditto Transcripts and exactly why this is a key solution for your organization's workload issues, check out episode 232. The views and opinions expressed by the host and guests of this show do not represent their employing agency, department, or organization. All information should be regarded as anecdotal, contextual, and educational, and should not be misinterpreted as legal or medical advice. Welcome to Blue Grit Radio, the podcast that explores making better cops for a better community. I'm your host, Eric Tung. I've been an active police officer since 2007. We will dive into the aspects of police culture, health and wellness, leadership, and mindset. You'll hear from experts not only from policing, but all industries as they relate to being our best with purpose, passion, and positivity. Join me as we share stories, lessons, and advice so we can all be better for ourselves, our teams, our families, and our communities. Hey everyone, welcome back. Today's episode spans into a lot of realms of health and mindset and psychology. And where the topic starts at face value is money and financial advice or psychology. But the takeaways are so vast in it. This book had my brain going in all kinds of directions when I listened to the audiobook. And then when I finally received the physical book from the library after being in like some super long line, shout out to the library because, by the way, if you have book ADD like me, it's a really low guilt way to get your hands on a lot of books and a lot of information and kind of pick and choose through them depending on how you're feeling. But if you want something now and it's not locally available, then that is the con. And of course, it doesn't have everything. Anyway, coming back to this book. It's called The Psychology of Money. It's by Morgan Housel. And this book came to my awareness from a really close buddy who is actually an accountant. So when you hear a book about money and a dude is a very successful accountant and entrepreneur, I thought that was wise to pay attention. He did share that it was a lot about spending and the psychology of how we interact with money, which I was intrigued by for sure. We talk about all kinds of health and mindset things on the show, financial health, man, it can be like a religion, but this is not a book on financial advice or what to do with your money, but it's more like how do you approach money or how do people approach money and how are we affected by the markets and stuff. But even as I say that, I was kind of tempted to reverse engineer this where I talked about so many of my takeaways and then share that this actually came from a book about psychology of money. Regardless, I'm going to kind of go into some main themes and flip through this book that if you're on my social media or follow along, probably at this point, like a couple months ago, definitely several weeks prior to when you're hearing this, I posted this and it's got like all these, ratty little torn sticky notes. Misty, fellow LEO commented, sent me a message. She's like, how do you say that you're out of Post-its without saying you're out of Post-its? But relevant, maybe kind of topical with this topic of money, actually ripped up the Post-it notes into these little tabs, like those little strips you can buy, but I don't have those right now, just to save on the Post-it notes, right? So it's not just money, it's a little bit of frugality and like, well, I don't really need to waste a Post-it note on every single page I want to flag, come back to, but there's that. So some main themes are that it's really about like behavior and emotions rather than the rationale and the brass tacks intelligence over what you do with money. So that might be a no-brainer for some people. It's less about what you know. It's more about what you do with it. Like, what are your behaviors around money? And again, that theme, I think, translates to so many walks of life, probably life in general, right? It's not what you know, it's what you do with it. So it's not just raw information or data. It is in like actionable intelligence, like the application and the discernment of what's important and what you take away, right? It's not the stuff you can recite from a textbook, it's how you apply it to life. And so that's kind of the first one that really sticks out with money in this book. He also goes to talk about luck and risk. And this is a section I really like because he calls them siblings. And basically, how I'm visualizing it is they're kind of like two sides of the same coin. And so, whereas we can recognize whether it's financially, like the money markets or like the stock market, or whether it's what circumstance you're born into or what opportunities, quote unquote, fall into your lap, whether you want to look at that financially or whether you want to look at that in like life and circumstance and career, like what opportunities you were afforded or not afforded versus that guy over there and your perceptions. There's also this component where that does play into it, but also risk. So hindsight being 2020, it really explores how we can't really we can't reverse analyze everything accurately. Sometimes we can say, oh, that person, like that investor, made that series of decisions. Of course, like I got to replicate that. That's genius. But a lot of times they don't really have that information. And there's a lot of other sections that really illustrate this. I mean, when a lot of people look at Warren Buffett and how he is either the wealthiest person or one of them in the world. But at a certain point, continuing to get all these big wins only occurs because he has the ability to keep risking and diversify his risks. So when he has all these different ventures and all these things, like, of course, a lot of them fail, but you only need a couple of them to hit and to hit big. And so why that matters in a financial context, in a wealth context, is that it helps the rich get richer. And this is not like a political statement. You can take it how you want, but I think that this is relevant to when we look at just life, success, and career. There's a lot of people that hustle and they start new side businesses, but ultimately the people that have more wealth or influence or potential, like to start, have more opportunities because they're basically able to parlay that. So, I mean, if you wanted to start like a tequila or a mezcal company, just save up all your pennies, get with your partner and decide to take out a small business loan and try to make it happen. A lot of us might feel that that's pretty risky without even hearing more information. However, if fill in the blank celebrity wants to start a tequila company at the same time they're kicking up a podcast, at the same time they have a clothing line, like it's not that risky because they have so much resource behind it already. And then ultimately, it's not that risky for them because if one of those companies absolutely just tanks off the get-go, well, it probably won't because they're going to do a lot of homework and resourcing prior to that and analyze the markets, which only probably illustrates and underlines my point. Even if one of them failed, you'd have all these other ones kind of take off. And I think that there's an application to that when we look at how we prioritize our life and strategy and health. Like we don't want to put all our eggs in one basket. Slow and steady wins the race, which is really a notion here that they analyze with, or he analyzes with specific examples of like an actual event where this kind of middle America janitor, like he passed away and he left his kids like a few $1 million and then he donated like several more $1 million to charity. And it really just came from him just making a couple investments a long time ago and then compound interest doing what it does, which is like a more brass tack, I suppose, financial concept and advice. But even on the thing of compound interest, like I think that the lesson beyond money is how are we applying compound interest to our lives and all the things we want to get better at. It's not about sitting down and reading 4 books in one day. It's about reading a couple chapters a day. And then you really cover a lot of ground. It's not this huge obstacle. It doesn't mess up your whole day. Also, you probably learn better, right? So slow and steady, gradual patience will win the day. The other thing is, examples like the gym. Like, is it about 2-a-days for 2 hours each session? I mean, is that going to get you results? Maybe. It might also get you like a yo-yo experience because you're going to get ripe for injury. You might tank your metabolism, especially when you insert a lot of these quote unquote quick fixes to health, like extreme diets, like calorie restriction. I almost don't want to comment, I'll even say it, but like certain medications and this rapid weight loss, like I'm not a doctor. I'm pretty clear I say that in the intro and on other resources, but I'm not also saying that that's not a good option for some people that might be facing extreme health issues. But I think it's wise to say that whether it's that or slashing calories or 3-a-day workouts, you got to look at like what the short-term goal is and the long-term goal, and recognize that every decision we make, whether it's in health or life, is going to have just downstream consequences, a cause and effect. Sometimes they're obvious to be seen, sometimes they're not obvious at all. Or else we'd make great decisions all the time, at work and at home. So making a decision is also even like not making a decision, right? So the non-action or the inaction can also generate the same downstream consequences that we need to be aware of, especially in the job, like the contingencies of walking away or not engaging. We need to evaluate them thoroughly, just like whether we act. Another concept is essentially like about the wealth that you don't see. So we can all look in this really capitalistic, forward, materialistic society we're in, especially Western culture. I venture to guess that's the extreme majority of the listenership here. It's a lot of times not what you see. I mean, that's like the flash, like the car, and we're gonna look at archetypes. It's the young, the early 20s probationary dude, the rookie that buys like the $100,000 truck when everyone is actually telling him not to, because he's not even on off probation, and the housing market's nuts, and man, you should probably save some money for a house and just drive like a pretty cool truck, right? For just not quite that much amount of money. But it's truly what you don't see, right? It's the accounts that aren't shared on social media, and a lot of folks get that, and a lot of folks don't. And I think that another relevant thing is to focus in on is what the spending might be telling you. And I don't want to go like too deep psychology on other topics that really aren't wrapped into the book. I mean, that certainly is, but what comes up in my mind are conversations like from James Hollis, where the issue you see is actually not the issue. And we will take that little sidestep because I went there. But an example that James Hollis gives in a recent book I was looking at was that if you have an eating disorder, the issue is actually something else, right? It's an emotional void, it's trauma from earlier in life. These are just examples. I'm not saying everything, right? And he's not either. So like if you have this spending habit, or maybe it's an addiction, maybe it's a poor relationship with money and spending, and we're chasing that over time, to make it context specific for law enforcement or first responders, but we're chasing that over time and we don't even realize we're doing it. We're trying to keep up with the Joneses and we don't even realize we're doing it, or we do realize we're doing it. Either way, that's not wealth. That's not going to help you and your family, and it's not going to hold long as far as like the positive feelings that you get from it. He even has this part in the book where he talks about when you see that, let's just say that archetypical middle-aged dude driving that really fantastic sports car that you dreamed about, you don't actually pay attention to the dude. Like, you don't really think that the dude is that cool looking driving that sports car. What you're doing is you're placing yourself into that sports car and you're thinking that you're going to be cool and people are going to think you're cool. So whether or not that's true, I think that's a healthy exercise to kind of recognize, and then recognize or stay curious, like not accusatory, because some people like nice things and that's totally cool, but realize like, where might this be coming from? And ask yourself, like, is this the thing? Is this the thing that I truly want? And something I've said for years in just kind of reflection of life and spending, and especially those of us in the job that may have an ability to earn overtime and additional income and all that stuff, is that you can be the boat guy, you can be the RV guy, you can be the sports car guy, you can be the motorcycle guy, you can be the fancy house and the sauna, like all the health things in your house guy. You can be the vacation guy where you go to Vegas and Mexico and Disneyland once a year each. You can be the fancy watch guy, you can be the gun guy. How could I forget the gun guy, right? But you probably can't be all those things. And you probably can afford to be a couple of those things, depending on your other obligations and responsibilities. And if one or more of those things bring you joy, and one or more of those things are a true investment that make you feel like your best, light up you and your life experience and your family's life experience, then by all means, right? But recognize that everything is a trade. The time you spend at work to get the money for those things is a trade. And it's not to say don't work overtime. It's just know why you're doing it and know intrinsically that it's worth it. The next prong would be to compare reasonableness with rationale. And it could be really hard for us in looking at money to be rational all the time. It would lead somebody like me and certain personality types to be really Spartan in our financial approach, where do I need that or do I not need that? Right? Is that superfluous? Is that extra? Is that bougie? Is that wasteful? I'm not going to get it. And then feel guilty if I, indulge, like, man, I really want that. I really want that nice jacket, even though I have plenty of jackets. Or I really want that nice new pair of boots, even though I have plenty of boots. Whatever the thing is, right? I want to eat out at that nicer restaurant. I want to go out for that special occasion. I really want to go to that place, though. It's like everyone's talking about it. I haven't been. This is a really special occasion. It's not to make it feel like a guilty thing. And that's where the word reasonableness, or to be reasonable, has a lot of value. So you're not being so strict in approaching everything with optimalness or like this extreme practicality, because that can really kind of hurt you emotionally. And he talks about that in detail. So it's just recognizing like what matters to you and what can you live with over time, not burn out, and what is sustainable for your funds, but also for like your quality of life, because life should be lived and life should be enjoyed. Another sidestep, some of you may be familiar with like the Epicurean lifestyle, right? It's even in some like cookbooks and that kind of word, and it's been kind of socialized, and I recently learned kind of bastardized from what it really means. And when we hear Epicurean, we think like it's all about hedonism and glutton, and just like it's about living the good life, and like it's kind of like being like a hobbit in the Shire, where you get all the things, you have the rich desserts, you relax, you kick back, you have the drink, the spritz, whatever. You have the lavish things, the fancy things, the comfy things. But really, Epicurus, who it's named after, he has like passages that he wrote which are not about over excess. It was more about like being present. And let's say it's like, to paraphrase, there's a quote he has about sitting and eating cheese with your friend. And I think a lot of listeners, certainly a lot of people in my life, think that sounds absolutely delightful, right? Like pour a glass of wine, have some cheese, have some charcuterie, get that bouginess going on. But it's not so much like just in excess. It's more about how critically and fantastic like it could be to be aware at that level, to be so present, so grateful, and in so much enjoyment to have a simple piece of cheese with your friend, and really enjoying that cheese and really enjoying the conversation and the moment. And I think that's what a lot of us could really resonate with. It's not about like eating like the whole cheese board, been there, done that kind of thing, but it is about being grateful and really present. So again, that's just kind of what comes to mind in this conversation of being reasonable versus rational. The next point I'll bring up is recognizing that there's room for error, and you want to account for like a margin of safety. So some points he brings up, like you basically want to plan for the unexpected, build buffers, so we can think about how that makes sense in a financial sense, right? Like emergency savings fund. A lot of financial planners and advisors and advice will talk about having enough liquid money, like cash or like a savings account or like a high yield savings account, for if and when that thing happens. Like the fridge breaks down, it leaks, it damages the hardwood floor, there's a leak in the roof. Like these things you have to attend to pretty quickly. Maybe your car breaks down and it's going to be a few $1,000s. Whereas like that just is that buffer. And again, a takeaway for the job and life is like you got to have that buffer for whatever, right? You don't want to run to a call or an incident with just the bare bones. Oftentimes it feels like we do, but it's also recognized like what other resources there are. So if you're in the middle of the night and you have like a literal skeleton crew because someone called out sick, and that's the kind of thing that happens and you're understaffed, well, that call is sounding pretty, you don't know it's going to be sketchy, but it could be if things go a bad way and you're anticipating the contingencies. Well, maybe you ask for some of your neighbor buddies that are always willing to help, because you're always willing to help them. Maybe you just have them aware, right? Ask dispatch to have them start your way. It doesn't mean they need to start screaming or flying, but it may be really helpful if they just kind of stop what they're doing and just tune in and switch to your radio frequency in case you should need more help. So I think that there's a fantastic opportunity to kind of recognize, again, how these pearls of wisdom, these strategies can translate a lot of things, right? We talk about leadership. We talk about how we should learn from military leaders, historical political leaders, from all kinds of industries. And this is very similar, right? I'm talking about a psychology of money book, but some of the concepts, when I read them and when I'm talking about them now, it makes me think about how we can translate that to our lives and careers. And another prong. Essentially, you'll change. Your goals, desires, and habits will change. So goal setting is really important. It's not like a set or forget it. This is where I do recommend you establish like your personal life goal and you make some notes over that. Maybe you revisit it monthly. That's a goal of mine. I don't hit it every month, but maybe you set it once a year, right? New Year's, perfect time. You make resolutions, but you actually read the goal you wrote last year, or kind of the version of the life goal, your personal mission statement. Because these things should adapt. We keep living life, we keep learning, we keep growing, we keep having things happen to us. Hopefully we happen back to them and respond and grow through adversity. But that is kind of the thing. We're going to grow and change, and so our goals need to be adaptable. And again, translations being your health routines, your health strategies, things that I talk about in Get Gritty or leadership training that I'm putting out. These things are absolutely translatable to that. So as went through those tenets and themes, I do want to just flip through my notes here. This is a quote that really stuck out to me. I mean, it's right, and it's before the book even starts, but a genius is the man who can do the average thing when everyone else around him is losing his mind. And that's from Napoleon. So when we talk about finances, we can recognize that can be absolutely tumultuous. We look at the market, we look at extreme things that have happened in our lifetimes and just outside of our lifetimes with the market, and you can see how like panic can set in. But then he's saying a genius is the person that does the average thing. So I really like that quote for several reasons, because one really highlights the power of doing like something that's not super impressive, not super sexy, not super innovating or game changing, but just do the average thing. Because if you keep your head on straight, whether it's the financial market, you don't panic and do what everyone does to make markets crash. Look at the Great Depression. If you can manage that and keep somewhat cool, then you'll come out ahead, because most people are not keeping somewhat cool. I think that this brings it right back to like police work. We know that is kind of the point of being a first responder. You have the training, we're self-selecting. You decide you want to do this job where you are the calm in the storm. But it's easier said than done sometimes. The vast majority of the time, we do perform and operate that way. However, you get that one person that just can get under your skin, and you've been dealing with them for way too long. They're probably drunk. They're probably dealing with some low-level crime, and they start chipping at you, and you start chipping back at them. Well, that's not doing the average thing. And you are starting to lose your mind in the direction of that person losing their mind. I've seen so many versions, and I'm sure this will hit home regardless of what agency you work for, where you work in the country, small, rural, large, feds, whatever. But when the rumor mill starts, and depending on where your culture's at, any news is quickly manipulated and twisted into bad news. And the catastrophizing can kick up and go absolutely out of control. Again, any news becomes bad news. The toxicity just twists and morphs this into a thing, and everyone starts losing their mind, right? What sounded like a good thing on paper has now become a bad thing. So my challenge and invitation is to be aware of that, right? When in doubt, take a breath. Ask yourself, is this constructive? Is it helpful? Is it true? That's a shout out to a fire station, a local fire station, where that was like up on the wall. I want to say it was in the gym or something, some kind of obscure place where there's these three things. It's like, is it constructive? Or paraphrase, is it helpful? Is it true? And that could be rumors. That could be what you contribute, what you say. That could be talking smack, or that could just be spreading some nonsense. But if we keep to that, man, think about how much healthier our organizations and our teams would be. Flipping along, we talked about that. I really like this. Be careful who you praise and admire. Be careful who you look down upon and wish to avoid becoming. Again, this kind of like highlights the outcome basedness, but then also like what's beneath the surface. So that's a couple concepts I brought up earlier. I think it's really important that we don't put people on pedestals. I think the longer I live and the closer I've gotten to get to do some of the things I'd really set out to do as a younger man, and I get there and I feel like it, I'm going to have some like crazy epiphany or some crazy feeling of triumph. and I start rubbing shoulders with some people that have really done some amazing things. But if you uplift them too much, then you start getting really critical of the things that feel imperfect. And I think that we have like a judginess inside all of us. I know personally like a lot of really great people that are really hard on themselves, and that's how that can kind of get projected. And so, not to take this huge like pivot away, but I think it matters for looking at wealth and the things, the haves, have nots that you perceive, but so much more is beneath the surface. And so that is just a recognition and I guess a moment just to recognize where you're at and where do you think these feelings or perceptions are coming from, and how it might seem obvious when we say it, but it's really easy to get sucked into the noise and the movement of life. But truly so much more impactful when we work on ourselves than what we have, right? When we work on our own attitudes, when we work on developing ourselves, improving ourselves physically, mentally, spiritually, as far as like making yourself a better person, a better team member, than what you have in the garage or what you're driving around town in to get groceries. This does come from the Luck and Risk chapter, and he talks about Bill Gates. And this one really stuck out to me. Bill Gates, he basically says, had essentially like a 1 in a million chance to be in the right place and space to be Bill Gates. What he meant by that, and this is a super quick paraphrase, is the story of Bill Gates growing up in the Lake Washington School District in Western Washington, Seattle area, was that he went to a school that was extremely affluent and had this teacher that was, I want to say, a World War II vet. He was really into technology and the advent of computers, and he really believed in them. And he believed in practical learning beyond just theory and textbooks. So he had the opportunity to get money that was raised from this affluent area in the school district. They had some money that he could use to buy one of the very few computers like anywhere, for a school. And then kids in his class only, really, is if I'm remembering correctly, had access to play around on this computer and learn on this computer. A few of which were Bill Gates, Paul Allen, and this other gentleman. His name escapes me. Well, along with the rest of this, we know how the story of Bill Gates goes in a general sense, right? He takes to it, it takes to him, and he's doing some amazing things with it, hence Microsoft, and on and on. Extreme wealth. We know that. The third friend in their trio was an avid outdoorsman as a teenager, or, they're all teenagers, they're kids. And he goes out on this climbing hike kind of situation, and he unfortunately falls and dies. Now, when the author runs some numbers, the likelihood statistically that someone of his age would die on a hike or a climb, I think he factors some other components in. I mean, this is not like a noob, like he did this regularly. The statistical chance that he would die in a situation like that was 1 in a million. And so the power there is to see in this really, really extremely small sample size, two extremely, extremely rare circumstances and end results for two friends in one classroom in Western Washington in a school. One changes the world undeniably and becomes one of the richest people in the world from that industry, and the other dies in a really rare accident as a teenager. And so it is a reminder just to recognize that we should be cognizant and aware of what we're hyper fixated on or what we are trying to study, whether that is opportunity and material success or whether that is career, and truly what worked for that person may not and probably won't work for you. And that's kind of the complicated nature of studying history. Is if we studied history, which the common thing is those that don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. And we do repeat a lot of historical events. But if we were absolute true studies of history, there's still all the unaccountable things that we just won't account for because they haven't happened, right? So it's not a future study. It's a predictive type of discipline. There are so many factors that impact the well-being of law enforcement officers, from wellness topics and developmental content to organizational expectations and social connections. RippleWorks solves that problem by providing anonymous check-ins, so each officer can get exactly what they need and want for prime performance, while agencies learn in real time how their people are doing through analytic dashboards. Take a look at RippleWorks today at www.rippleworks.com and schedule a demo. That's RippleWorks, WORX.com. Okay, I could really go down some more rabbit holes there. Another quote here: the hardest financial skill is getting the goalpost to stop moving. Man, isn't that a thing for trying to chase happiness, right? So we can talk about money, but we could talk about chasing happiness. And in a recent discussion I had where we talk about some kind of Jungian psychology and James Hollis, the thing that they posit, especially James Hollis, is chase purpose rather than happiness. And you might end up with both. My flip to that, and he might say it in a lot of different ways. So I'm not trying to say this is like a crazy, unique idea. But if you chase happiness, you could easily end up with neither. And I would submit that a ton of people that chase happiness, or maybe even a majority of people that chase happiness, end up with neither. So, food for thought there. There are many things never worth risking, no matter the potential gain. I think that evokes thoughts of values and how, there's certain things that we just won't do for money, and there's certain things that we won't do to keep our jobs. And I know that a lot of people face that really personally, and they continue to face that, not just in law enforcement, but all sorts of industries. And so that is where priorities and values and reflection therein truly matter in a really, really big way. Okay, getting wealthy versus staying wealthy. So very different concepts, right? It's like in the context of this broader conversation, getting healthy versus staying healthy. There's no such one and done. There's no easy process. There's no silver bullet, as are common themes in this show and the things we talk about here, or I write about or share about with all you folks, and you share back certainly on social media and beyond. It is the process, and it's like a nod to the myth of Sisyphus that has to roll the boulder up. He's condemned, right? This is like his punishment. Roll the boulder up every day. At the end of the day, you're going to wake up back at the bottom. You got to push the thing up again. But if we lean into that grind, if we lean into that concept that we can work to get better every day, it's not about being at the top of a mountain and just living there for all our days, as some people socialize retirement. Certainly in law enforcement, there are a lot of people like, man, I'm going to get to 53 or 55. I'm going to put in my 25 or 30, and then I'm just going to be on a beach somewhere, drinking Mai Tais. I'm like, cool, like no judgment, not for me though. I'm not saying I'm not going to do that, but I'm also going to do that kind of thing. It won't be Mai Tais, be a nice beer or like a mimosa in the morning. Enjoy your vacations. Take your time. Go see places. Like, don't wait until retirement. And then for me, retirement is not like a state where I'm just going to like passively exist, because passive existing equals, unfulfilled, meaningless road to perishing, in my humble opinion. So another quote I love from this is, you can be wrong half the time and still make a fortune. So there's a tangible connection back to what I said earlier about investment, diversity, stuff like that. Like he talks about Warren Buffett, right? And so on. But I like that quote for application of life and philosophy, right? You can be wrong a lot. Most of us are. A lot of people I look up to, a lot of people that have achieved some amazing things, or just like fantastic people, they've made a lot of mistakes, but they learn from them and they keep learning and growing. And so I think that is a model to keep in mind, is not to beat ourselves up because we make mistakes, whether you're a rookie or whether you're, a brand new captain or what have you. You're going to make mistakes. We're human. The key is learning and growing from them. Freedom. There's a whole chapter called Freedom, and I know that'll resonate with the audience for sure. But the subtitle is Controlling Your Time is the Highest Dividend Money Pays. So what this evokes for me is like, why do we work? Why do we do all this? What is the purpose and the point behind it? A lot of us say because we have to, right? We got to support our families, of course, like financial stability, you got a mortgage, you got bills. But really a lot of people, like they want to work so that they can control like their free time, right? It might be financial freedom, that concept. It might be like so you can eventually get to an F off level of money where you have the amount of money just to be like, no, this doesn't serve me, F off, I'm going to go do something else. I'm going to go trade my time for dollars somewhere else. Whatever freedom means for you, I think that's worth exploring that and highlighting that. It's such a pillar in our American society, clearly. But I think there's a lot of varieties of personal freedom of choice for how we spend our time, what we spend our time doing. We certainly, the extreme majority of us, have to spend a lot of time away from our families in the context of society to be able to support things and our families. So make sure it's worth it, right? Make sure we are cemented in our purpose and we keep refining that, right? Just like everything else, it's not one and done. You got to keep investing and reflecting on that to find meaning in what you're doing, to be purposeful, to be content. We covered the man in the car paradox. Basically, in better words, he says, no one is impressed with your possessions as much as you are. And that's not a knock on having the things you like. That is just an awareness piece, right? Again, it's an awareness that it's for you. So make sure it's about you, not what you think people will think about you. Wealth not being what you see. I guess the other takeaway that I made a note of is social media. Like, it's like what is beneath the surface of the social media. And of course, I'm on social media a lot. But we all know people, and this is not disparaging, but we know people that put on a very different story. And it doesn't serve them, right? It doesn't serve them. And then the comparison that is so pervasive, you see this a lot in young people, how it affects their mental health. It is so toxic at times. It's worth us being aware of. And those of us with kids, certainly. And as my kid grows older, it's something that I'm going to try to keep in mind with the dynamics of today. Comparison is the thief of joy, after all, right? This is a concept that many people have heard before in a lot of different varieties, but past a certain level of income, what you need is just what sits below your ego. It's a different way to say it, but a lot of awareness that there's a certain amount of income that statistically and through studies can get you to this like place of security and essential like high happiness ratings. Beyond that, there's really not a big marker. I know that, and I mentioned how law enforcement makes all kinds of different amounts of money through the nation, certainly, but at least for Washington State, West Coast, a lot of agencies do pretty well. It's a living income, fortunately, because we expect a lot of our officers, so we should pay them accordingly. But it is mindful, when we talk about overtime and overinvestment in work and time away from home and health, family, all these things. All right, nothing's free. We covered that, right? Everything's a trade. Beyond just money, it's time, it's energy, it's bandwidth, it's resource, your own emotional energy and resource to all the decisions you do or don't make. Again, be cognizant of you and me. So everyone's context is different. My lap might be very different than your lap. So beware taking financial cues from people playing a different game than you are. And that is the subtitle of that chapter. I'm almost done, so bear with me. The seduction of pessimism. Man, we talk about pessimism and cynicism so much in this job. The subtitle to this chapter, chapter 17, is Optimism Sounds Like a Sales Pitch. Pessimism sounds like it's like someone's trying to help you. Let's think about that. Again, this is beyond money. I think that this really hits home for the law enforcement culture, first responder culture. Optimism sounds like a sales pitch, right? No one wants to be sold to. So you're trying to sell me something that's unrealistic, maybe even a lemon, right? Versus pessimism sounding like someone is trying to help you. So like, hey man, I'm trying to help you. Fair warning, don't be so optimistic. Beware, I don't want you to get your hopes up. I don't want you to be surprised. So how does that sit with you with law enforcement? And we have all these horror stories, these cursory tales, and they should be acknowledged and we should be made aware of them. But I think like so many awesome resources and mentors on the show have said before, what's popping to mind right now is actually a collab with Chris Littrell and John Kelly. If you look back in the archives, where we talk about like it's a time of action, right? It's not just like, hey, wellness, awareness, PTS, awareness, information, awareness. It's about application. Like, again, what do we do with this information? I want to say it's John that said, and this is reminding me, I think it was the beginning of 2025, right? I think that because it was just after the new year, he's like, hey, this is a year for action. And so what do we do all this with this information? You listen to these podcasts, you read these books. Cool. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're taking part. But are you actually taking part? And what are you doing for it? So less ego, more wealth. I think that's very translatable to so many facets that we talked about. Very different type of episode, clearly. There's just so many nuggets here, and I flipped through the book and pulled out all my notes in this big kind of rat's nest of a mess on my desk now. But it is to say, again, it's beyond the psychology of money. It's conversations and thoughts provoked about wealth, and wealth is health. It's not just money. It's not just what's in your bank account or your retirement account. It's in all your accounts, right? Your physical account, your mental account, your familial relational accounts, your friendships. There's so much overlap and interplay, intersecting with all these different facets of your life. And then all these lessons rooted in psychology for spending habits that translate into how you prioritize your life and how we can prioritize our lives in a way that serves us better, right? Not just better and arbitrary, like I'm telling you what's better, but hopefully in sharing all of this, it helps jog your faculties a little bit so you can think of what is best for you, and you can talk to your loved ones and your families and think about what is best for you and how you want to approach putting some of these concepts into play. Again, the book, and it'll be in the show notes, is The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. It's House. I know that a lot of people sent me messages when I posted about book reviews. I'm a little hesitant because sometimes the title or the seeming topic might not grab everyone, but hopefully this was helpful for you. It's certainly fun to learn and share in this different format. Again, I know a lot of people kind of commented that they're excited to hear about this. So as always, what's tracking with you, what's resonating with you, please send me a message. Let me know. That's bluegritwellness at Gmail, or that's Blue Grit Wellness on Instagram. And then LinkedIn. I love interacting with people on LinkedIn. There's a lot of you that are connecting and following and sharing stuff out on there. So yeah, hit me up there. I'm on there. Let me know what you want to hear more of. As always, let me know what's helpful. I really appreciate the messages. I really, really appreciate the reviews. When you go on Spotify or Apple and you give a 5-star review or rating, and then review on Apple if you can with the comments, that really helps the show's discoverability. It's been really rewarding to have new people kind of message out, and I try to remember, and I'm always curious, hey, where did you find the show or the page? And a lot of people, especially younger folks that are applying or they're new rookies, they're like, hey, I found you on Spotify because I was looking at podcasts and I was just searching for this keyword or this phrase. So that's super rewarding. It is really a huge reason, one of the prevailing reasons why I got into all this stuff. So again, thank you so much. If you're not already subscribed to the newsletter, please do that. It's bluegritwellness.com. That's how you're going to stay up to date on all these things. You get these little nuggets that are a little bit more exploratory, little prompts of the week, thoughts, reflections, and new happenings. Thanks again. Share it out. Appreciate y'all. Thank you for tuning into another episode of Blue Grit Radio. As always, support this community by subscribing, giving us a 5-star review, and following, liking, and sharing posts on Blue Grit Wellness on Instagram. You can reach me there or email me at bluegritwellness@gmail.com. Be well and stay gritty.